Charges for those linked to LegCo protests against new towns. Fallout from the Scottish independence referendum. And France carries out its first airstrikes in Iraq against Islamic State militants.
Good evening, everyone. The police have filed charges against a number of people who took part in protests at the Legislative Council in June against the Northeast New Territories Development Project. Authorities insist the move is not politically motivated. Evelina Lung reports.
A group of protesters against the new towns in Northeast New Territories staged a demonstration outside Central Police Station today. They say the police asked those who staged protests in June outside LegCo to report to the station over the past 2 days. The group claims at least 14 of them have been charged.
It is a political problem because, as we all know, that there is a student strike and the Occupy Central is coming soon. So if the police and government choose this critical moment to arrest and charge us, this is a very, we know that they have a mission behind their mind.
The police rejected claims the case is politically motivated. They announced that charges have been filed against 4 people. 2 of them, aged 15 and 24, have each been charged with unlawful assembly and forcible entry. The 24-year-old man, along with a 40-year-old man, have each been charged with violating the regulation of admittance to precincts of the chamber and the Legislative Council. And a 20-year-old man has been charged with interference with members, officers, or witnesses at LegCo. The 4 suspects will appear at Eastern Magistracy on Thursday. The 15-year-old, meanwhile, has also been charged with access to computer with criminal or dishonest intent. For that, he'll appear at Eastern Magistracy on October 8th. While the protests occurred 3 months ago, it's understood that the police have just recently received the legal opinion offered by the Department of Justice, stating there is enough evidence to press charges. Evelina Lang, TVB News.
The Hong Kong Federation of Students will kick off its week-long class boycott by tertiary students on Monday, while secondary students plan to stage a one-day boycott next Friday. But as Rani Samtani reports, there have been more concerns about students taking part in such activities.
Thousands of university students from various institutions are expected to join the class boycott next week. Today, Polytechnic University said it will respect its students' decisions.
We view our students as adults, and they can make their own decisions on what to do. So I'm confident that they will do so after due consideration of all aspects related to this issue. We don't encourage class boycott, and we don't stop them from participating either.
But Professor Ho Lok Sang from Lingnan University said he fears there will be dire consequences.
I am worried that this class boycott does nothing but actually make things worse and distance themselves from the central government, so that the central government will have less trust on Hong Kong people. And if the central government has less trust on Hong Kong people, then even in the future, it's quite unlikely for the central government to lower the threshold, for someone to be nominated to be a CE candidate. So it doesn't do any good.
Secondary school students have planned their one-day class boycott for next Friday. Hua Yan College said it will remain neutral and will not punish students who take part. However, Stephen Kai, chairman of the Federation of Parent-Teacher Associations in Kwun Tong, said if students join the boycott, they Meanwhile, the Parents Association of Hong Kong today visited 8 districts around town to show their opposition to secondary school students taking part in the boycott. As for the rally planned by the Civil Human Rights Front on October 1st, the Leisure and Cultural Services Department has urged the group to consider postponing it until the next day. The department earlier turned down the group's application to start the rally at Victoria Park. Ronnie Samtani, TVB News.
A local National People's Congress deputy says continuous communication between Beijing and Hong Kong would help to push political reform forward. President Xi Jinping will be meeting a group of Hong Kong business leaders in the capital on Monday. Liz Yoon has more.
Speaking with TVB today, David Wong welcomes the upcoming meeting between the president and Hong Kong business representatives following the recent decision by Beijing on political reform.
Well, I think that these meetings they are always useful. We've seen the various groups from Hong Kong visiting Beijing since the decision came out. Whether they're from labor or from political parties, and now we have business groups and so on. I think that this is all very well, and I think that this is the time really for Beijing to communicate very strongly this message, to the Hong Kong community that it is very serious about moving universal suffrage ahead, and hopefully we will not lose this opportunity.
Regarding the composition of the 1,200-strong nominating committee, Wong is hopeful there's room for greater representation in future.
Basically, the 4 sectors are pretty set, in terms of the proportion. That's the way I understand it, within this each being 25%. But about the finer groups, there could be a broadening of the electoral base, in these individual groups and so on.
And despite the differences between Beijing and the Pan-Democrats, Wong believes that Pan-Democrats who love Hong Kong and love the country and who protect national security still stand a chance of becoming CE candidates.
I think that all along there are very, very significant differences between Beijing and the Pan-Democrats. But I think that the Pan-Democrats are not really excluded from participating in this CE election.
Wong added that Hong Kong and Guangdong province share close social and economic ties, and has urged LegCo members to join a visit to Guangdong next month, led by Chief Executive Leung Chun-ying. Liz Yun, TVB News.
Turning overseas, Scotland's pro-independence leader has officially resigned following the decisive no vote to succession. But Alex Salmond emphasized that Edinburgh would hold London to the last-minute offers it made of more power that could radically reshape the United Kingdom. Alan Booknia files this report.
I believe that this is a new, exciting situation that's redolent with possibility. But in that situation, I think that party, parliament and country would benefit from new leadership.
Salmond says he'll stay on as First Minister and leader of the Scottish National Party until his term ends in November. He stressed the positives of losing the referendum.
We have now the opportunity to hold Westminster's feet to the fire on the vow that they've made to devolve further meaningful power to Scotland. This places Scotland in a very strong position.
There was mixed reaction to his resignation, even from independence advocates.
Oh my God, that's a shock. Didn't need to do that.
He didn't seem particularly popular. I think it was quite clear that many of the yes voters had a kind of clear wish to see him voted out once they got independent.
There was also a release of tensions following the hotly contested campaigning. The opposing sides clashed on the streets of Glasgow, where secessionists were taunted by nationalists, waving the Union Jack and singing Rule Britannia. While she kept out of the political debate, Queen Elizabeth issued a statement saying all of us throughout the United Kingdom will respect the result. And even though the separatist movement fell short in Scotland, analysts say the mere fact that a vote was held could have far-reaching effects.
In some ways, you have to see the very act of holding the referendum as the earthquake that will have aftershocks in different parts of Europe.
The aftershocks are already being felt in Spain's Catalonia region, where lawmakers yesterday overwhelmingly gave their leader the power to call a secession referendum. Spain's central government has denounced any referendum as illegal, but Catalonia's regional president wants the same chance that was given to Scots.
Prime Minister David Cameron said, I could have blocked the referendum in Scotland, but I am a Democrat. And this is something that should be heard in Madrid.
A yes vote, he says, will give him a political mandate to negotiate a path to independence. Alan Brooknia, TVB News.
France has conducted military strikes in Iraq against the Islamic State extremist group. More than a decade after spurning US President George W. Bush's war against Saddam Hussein, France yesterday became the first country to join American forces, pounding targets inside Iraq from the air. Flying from the United Arab Emirates, 2 French Rafale jets fired 4 laser-guided bombs to destroy a weapons and fuel depot outside the northern city of Mosul. That's part of the territory the militants have overrun in Iraq and neighbouring Syria. At the United Nations, the UN Security Council urged other countries to expand support for Iraq. While the US has said it's open to carrying out attacks in Syria against Islamic State targets, France says it will limit strikes to just Iraq. Well, Turkey had resisted joining the coalition against Islamic State because the group had 49 Turkish hostages in Iraq. Those hostages were freed and safely returned to Turkey earlier today, ending the country's most serious hostage crisis. They included diplomatic staff, children and Special Forces police. They were seized from the consulate on June the 11th when the Islamic State group overran the Iraqi city of Mosul and stormed the Turkish consulate there. Turkish officials did not provide details on the circumstances of their release, but said the hostages were freed through the country's intelligence agency's own methods and that no operation was carried out.
And still ahead in our newscast, Taiwan feeling the impact of a powerful storm. Sierra Leone on lockdown because of Ebola outbreak. And some really interesting documentary films to